Tonight, commissioners in Brunswick County heard about efforts to cut the number of deaths from drug overdoses. They heard a presentation from the county's Substance Use, Addiction, and Mental Health Commission. According to the report, overdose deaths are down by 27% in the state and across the country since last year. Experts attribute that decrease to having naloxone readily available to reverse an opioid overdose. One member of the commission told us the work has to continue, though, to bring the numbers down even more.
We're still elevated, and we're still even elevated from pre-pandemic levels. But to just know that things that we're trying are working is an encouraging sign to do more of them.
Experts also attribute having many more treatment options available through Medicaid as another way of keeping the number of overdose deaths down.